Join me tonight on Twitch at 11:30 p.m. Eastern after the conclusion of Sunday Night Football, where we'll talk about everything that happened this week in the NFL. And join me Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern to play some live NFL trivia for a chance to win cash prizes. Link in the description below. And now, on with our feature presentation. One of my favorite things to talk about on the channel is when a player plays well and puts up an incredibly gutsy performance while being badly injured, to the point where the average person would be wallowing in pain and wouldn't even think about playing a football game, let alone playing it at a high level. From New York Jets wide receiver Rob Moore destroying the Denver Broncos with a broken wrist, to Miami Dolphins quarterback Bob Marisi beating the Pittsburgh Steelers despite being in the hospital just hours before game time with the stomach flu, I could go on and on about some of these heroic performances. But in terms of the Thanksgiving slate of NFL games, there's a performance that deserves just as much praise that you might not be aware of. This is Dallas Cowboys quarterback Craig Morton, and on Thanksgiving Day in 1969, he did something that seems almost impossible. Because on this day against San Francisco, he started the game, threw multiple touchdowns, and did not lose, all while playing with a separated shoulder. Seriously, seems hard to believe that a quarterback could play under these conditions, but that's exactly what Craig Morton did. And this is the story behind that. Before I talk about the game in question, we need some context to understand just who Craig Morton is, how he was playing, and why the injury was so severe to begin with. After the 1968 season, legendary Cowboys quarterback Don Meredith announced his retirement from football. He made 3 straight Pro Bowls to cap his career off, and might have saved his best season for last, when in 1968, he guided the Cowboys to 11 wins and 13 starts while tossing 21 touchdowns and recording the best completion percentage of his career. Meredith is one of the few guys in NFL history who voluntarily left at the peak of his career. But with Meredith no longer under center, the Cowboys needed someone else to lead them. And that man was Craig Morton. The Cowboys drafted him in the first round of the 1965 NFL Draft, but he hadn't seen the field a whole lot for the first 4 years of his career, only starting 5 games in that stretch. Now, he was the leader to try and guide the Cowboys to their 4th straight appearance in the postseason and their 3rd straight Capital Division title. And honestly, to start off, it would be tough to play a whole lot better than Morton actually wound up playing. Over his first 4 games, the Cowboys went 4-0, and Morton threw 10 touchdowns and no interceptions, posting a passer rating in triple digits all 3 times. In one game, a 38-7 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles, he achieved the coveted perfect passer rating of 158.3, as he completed over 77% of his passes while throwing 3 touchdowns. In the first 4 games, Morton completed over 71% of his passes and had a passer rating of 152.5. In any era, that is absurdly high. In 1969, it was like he was playing a different sport. Obviously, it's hard to do much better than what Morton was doing to start the year off. And even though he naturally cooled down a bit, he was still playing at a really high level, and had the Cowboys winning games. Through the first 9 weeks of the season, the Cowboys were sitting pretty with an 8-1 record, and were in cruise control in the Capital Division. Back in 1969, only the division winners made it into the postseason, as in the NFL, unlike the AFL, there were no wildcards. And Dallas was up by 4 wins on Washington, who sat in second place with a record of 4-3-2. Tie games did not impact the standings back then. And Morton's play was a big reason why the Cowboys were in the position that they were in. Unfortunately, things were about to take an unfortunate turn for the worse. Just to emphasize how well Morton was playing at this point in the season, through his first 8 games, since he did not play on opening day, he had a passer rating above 74 in 6 of them. The league average that season was 71.6, and more often than not, Morton was not only breaking it, but was smashing that. Los Angeles Rams quarterback Roman Gabriel was named the MVP of the league that season, and from week 2 through 9, he had 15 touchdown passes. Morton had 14. Morton was going toe-to-toe with arguably the best quarterback in football, and he was doing this in just his first year as the team's starting quarterback. Gabriel was a seasoned veteran about to enter his 30s who made the Pro Bowl in each of the past 2 seasons. Morton was, for all intents and purposes, a rookie. So it only made sense that everything would change in week 10 on November 23rd, when the Los Angeles Rams would take on the Dallas Cowboys at the LA Memorial Coliseum. This was billed as the game of the year, as you had a 9-0 team facing off against an 8-1 team. Both teams had a point differential above 100, both teams had scored over 250 points, and both teams had a combined winning percentage of over 94%. And the game lived up to the hype. It was projected to be a close battle between arguably the top 2 teams of the league, and it was just that, as the game was tied at the half, and the Rams wound up winning the game 24-23. However, for the purposes of our story, the outcome of the game isn't really relevant. Rather, it's what happened during the game that gave Cowboy fans some panic, and set the stage for the main part of the story. Again, the Cowboys losing this game wasn't a big deal. They still had a sizable division lead, and the playoff sites were determined on a rotational basis and not off of regular season record, so the fact that they lost wasn't any real cause for concern. But losing their quarterback? That was a pretty big deal. And during the game, though there was no footage or accounts of when exactly it happened, Craig Morton got injured pretty badly. He separated his shoulder. And just like that, the hopes of the Cowboys season, as well as the health of their star quarterback, were in jeopardy. After meeting with team doctor Marvin Knight after the game, the doctor revealed that Morton needed surgery on his shoulder. It was his throwing shoulder too, so throwing on it seemed absolutely ridiculous. And even if he wanted to throw on it, how the heck can he get any power whatsoever? You take one hit and aggravate the injury worse, and then what happens? Not that separating any part of the body is good, and not that separating any body part isn't painful, but it'd be one thing if it was a body part that wasn't exactly essential to throwing a football. The last time I checked, the throwing shoulder was a pretty important part of the body for a quarterback to have healthy, and Morton's was separated. However, Morton was adamant about playing. He was going to get the surgery after the season. He wanted to fight through the pain and start under center. Head coach Tom Landry said that even though Morton didn't throw the way he did before the shoulder got hurt, then it was something that the team was going to have to live with, because as long as Morton was playing well, and as long as he was still good enough to throw a football, he was going to be in there. It's kind of odd that Landry said that they needed Morton to keep playing well until the division was won, considering the fact that their lead was so big that they pretty much had the division on lockdown, the fact that the health of their quarterback for a playoff run seemed to be more important than what seemed like, on the surface, some meaningless regular season games, and the fact that their backup quarterback was no slouch. Remember that they had a Heisman winner on the bench named Roger Staubach. His name might ring a bell. But Morton was going to play. As Morton said, he was not giving up his job to Staubach. He wasn't going to take any days off until after they beat the Niners on Thanksgiving Day. And no one, from a team doctor to a coach, stepped in and gave the job to Roger Staubach. With the way Morton was playing, if he felt that he could go on a separated shoulder, then he was going. No ifs, ands, or buts. And adding to the insanity of it all, Morton did not throw in the practices leading up to the game, so no one knew whether or not he'd be physically able to throw football until the actual day of the game. Oh, and this was a short week because it was Thanksgiving, and he had sore ribs from the game against the Rams as well, so he was hurting all the way around. Other than that, Morton was in peak physical condition. And amazingly enough, not only was he able to start the game against the 49ers, but he wasn't half bad. November 27, 1969. It's Thanksgiving Day, the last Thanksgiving before the NFL-AFL merger takes place, and we have a battle on our hands between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. If the Cowboys win, they officially clinch the Capital Division for the third straight season, and advance to the postseason for the fourth straight year. However, the main storyline was Craig Morton, who was starting this game while badly injured with a separated throwing shoulder. In front of a sold-out crowd at the Cotton Bowl, he had a chance to be the hero and pull off one of the most remarkable performances of all time, not just in the decade-long history of the Dallas Cowboys, but in the half-century-long history of the NFL. And considering the circumstances, Morton played pretty well, even if all the stats might not show it. He threw 2 beautiful touchdown passes in the second half, and with the Cowboys trailing 24-17 late in the fourth quarter, he threw the game-tying touchdown pass to Lance Redstill from 19 yards out with just under 5 minutes left. He also led what would have been the game-winning drive down the field, but after the Cowboys got called for a false start penalty, a 32-yard field goal by Mike Clark was moved to a 37-yard field goal, and that kick got blocked, meaning that the game ended in a 24-24 tie, since there was no overtime for regular season games back then. But Morton finished the game with 2 touchdown passes for 206 yards, and did what he had to do to put his team in position to win. Plus, the Cowboys didn't lose, so that's gotta count for something. I want to put his performance into some added context. The average quarterback threw about 1.5 touchdowns per game in 1969, and threw for 177 yards per game. With none of these stats whatsoever inflated by garbage time, Craig Morton was better than the league average during this game against the 49ers, not even 96 hours after separating his throwing shoulder and suffering from sore ribs. I legitimately don't know how something like that is possible. It defies all logic and all laws of how humans heal and deal with injuries. Yet, what Craig Morton did on Thanksgiving Day in 1969 was nothing short of remarkable, even if it didn't quite result in the winning effort that it probably should have. That leaves just one final question. With Morton showing that he can play on this separated shoulder, how would he fare the rest of the way? Well, it was a mixed bag. Morton was not going to ride the pine. He was going to ride this out and play through the pain, even if it would have been heavily scrutinized if it took place today. And there were some good moments in there, like a game he had against the Baltimore Colts where he threw for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns while posting an incredible passer rating of 126.6, and the season finale against Washington, where he threw a touchdown and no interceptions in a 20-10 victory against their arch rivals. However, there were some bad moments. like a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers where he threw no touchdowns and 2 picks with a passer rating of 26.1, and a playoff game against the Cleveland Browns where he only completed 8 out of 24 passes while throwing for 92 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and posting a passer rating of 11.1. Both of these ratings are worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball to the ground on every single play. Today, when people think of Craig Morton and his NFL career, it's usually associated with negative things. Yes, you might have some that think of him as the man that came off of the bench in 1979 against the Seattle Seahawks, and how it might be the greatest performance by a backup of all time, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But for the most part, you're thinking of bad things. You're thinking of his awful performance at Super Bowl V. You're thinking of the disastrous trade that sent him to the New York Giants. You're thinking of his performance at Super Bowl XII, which is probably the worst performance by any quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl, as he finished the game with a passer rating of 0.0. But you don't last 18 seasons in the NFL if you aren't talented and aren't capable. And if we're going to think of some good moments from Craig Morton's career, where he won 81 games and led multiple teams to the Super Bowl, this Thanksgiving performance should absolutely be up there. On Sunday, he separated his shoulder and injured his ribs. On Thursday, against the 49ers team with a solid pass defense that earlier in the month held the Detroit Lions to 1 singular passing yard, he threw 2 touchdowns and avoided a loss while being all hobbled and banged up. There have been lots of NFL games played on Thanksgiving, but perhaps none were as gutsy as what Craig Morton did during the final Thanksgiving game of the 1960s. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.